Hello again and welcome to another regiment focus video. Today we will be looking at the Valhallan Ice Warriors, a very iconic and awesome regiment. It's been with us for a long time, one of the original regiments for the Imperial Guard. We had a look at sort of the Vestroyans earlier today, which are one of the newest regiments, and now looking at one of the older regiments, which is the Valhallan Ice Warriors. So we're also going to talk about the confirmed conscript nerfs as well. We'll go. Might as well get it out of the way, guys. I was right. I wasn't right. My source, my inside info, was absolutely bang on. So that that's kind of credible. I now know that he's not bullshitting me. So it might have been third-hand information, but it was bang on. So, yeah, so conscripts can now only be taken in units of 20 to 30, and the reason for doing this is to reduce the effectiveness of stacking orders on a block of 50, and secondly, orders will only work on conscripts on a 4+, and should they fail, no more orders will work on that unit for the rest of the turn. So it's not like you fail and then no orders for the rest of your army. You just get one chance to get the order off. If the conscripts don't follow the order, then that's it. That's just unfortunate. Those conscripts can't do anything. You'll have to try next turn with them. So I think that's good. It's a good caveat. It's like a little mini nerf, because I had the first two, but the third mini nerf, basically it's like you can't just take loads and loads of commanders because they're only 30 points each and just keep rolling. Oh, try again. You can't do that. So those are the conscript nerfs confirmed. So yeah, I can live with that. I mean, I was only taking my conscripts in units of 30 anyway. I did used to like taking 40-man blobs, but 30 will do. And I've stopped issuing orders to my conscripts regularly anyway. Those of you that know my current standard platoon in inverted commas format, I take 10 veterans, 10 regular infantry, and 30 conscripts. And often the conscripts they just get in the way and of the enemy, of course, and they storm objectives and stuff like that. And generally speaking, they don't do a lot of damage. And I 99% of the time take aim on my plasma vets and my plasma regular infantry squad. However, one thing to note is this: a favoured strategy of myself, and one which I've encouraged on this channel a lot, is to use move to have a late game objective grab, where you would take a blob of conscripts. Most of the time the conscripts have been murderized. There's always, I've always found there's like a blob of sort of 20, 25 that are on one of the flanks which hasn't got as many enemies. And what you would do is you would move them onto an objective, and you would grab that objective at the end. So that's a lot trickier to do now. If you want to start using move, you can't just do move. You can't just use move on a blob of 30 conscripts and ram them down your enemy's throat and go, hey, deal with this. There's a 50-50 chance that's not going to go off. So that is what I actually think is the hidden massive nerf to conscripts. Sure, they're not putting out as many lasgun shots anyway. They're putting out a hell of a lot less now. They're only doing 120 shots rather than 200 on a full blob. If they get first round fire, they may not even get it off. But lasgun, even mass lasgun fire, doesn't do huge amounts. It generally, even when I've taken blobs of 50 and fired 200 lasgun shots, I generally would only kill 2 or 3 Space Marines. Lasguns really are quite weak. But now they can't even do that. I think the secret nerf is actually going to be you can't just ram 30 conscripts onto an objective very easily anymore. I mean, if you think of the last battle report I had against the Blood Angels player, and I'm going to stop talking about this in a second, but I just want to give an in-life example. The last battle I had against the Blood Angels player, Johnny, I managed to grab the relic using 2 blobs of 30 conscripts by moving them. I would not be able to do that. And I lost that game anyway, but it wouldn't have even been close if I'd had to rely on infantry squads to get the objective back to my home base. Wouldn't have been even close at all. So I think the Conscripts taking orders on a 4+, it's a bigger nerf than a lot of people will realise. Because a lot of people will go, oh well, doesn't matter. I use them for blocking anyway. But the number one, what I believe, competitive function of Conscripts was to dump bodies on objectives. That's become much, much harder to do. So we'll see how that plays out. We'll see how it plays out. I mean, I've got a feeling I'm going to have to get my hand on some Valhallans. I mean, I could just use my Mordians with Valhallan Doctrines, but that doesn't really seem right. Doesn't really feel right. I might have to get my hands on some Valhallans just to try it out. Anyway, moving on. So that's the conscript nerf. Let's now look at... That's the conscript nerf for everybody. Let's now look at the Valhallans themselves. So, the Valhallan Ice Warriors are ruthless even by the standards of the Astra Militarum and are renowned for their willingness to expend lives of their troops to secure victory for the Emperor. Okay. On the tabletop, Valhallan armies can keep fighting regardless of the horrific casualties, fire directly into units engaged in close combat, and even return destroyed units to the field. That's pretty... Okay, awesome. Right, so the Valhallan Regimental doctrine is grim demeanour. Possessed of a grim fatalism regarding the prospect of death, the Valhallan Ice Warriors will march unflinchingly into the most hellish of firestorms. Infantry units with this doctrine halve the number of models that flee, rounding up, if they fail a morale test. Vehicles with this doctrine that have the damage table... Vehicles with this doctrine that have a damage table double the number of wounds they have remaining for the purposes of determining what their characteristics are. Okay, so it's a two-part it's a two-part buff. So like the Kazachan being a three-part buff where you get strength, leadership, and big boom boom on tanks, and the Mordian one was a two-part buff where you get better Overwatch, better leadership, and the Restoring one was just a one-part buff where you get the better range on your weapons. The Valhallan is a two-part buff. It is... I think the infantry part of it is incredibly weak. I think it's almost pointless. I think the vehicle... Well, not almost pointless. Maybe that's an exaggeration. It is weak, though. And I think the vehicle part of it is very strong. So let me explain what I mean. Infantry units with this doctrine halve the number of models that flee, rounding up if they fail a morale test. So that is pretty pointless. Because we have commissars. And unless for some reason we're no longer able to take commissars, possibly the most iconic unit in the Imperial Guard Codex, one that comes in the start collecting set for both Astra Militarum and Tempesta Scions. So I really doubt they're going to get rid of commissars. They might be reworking the way they work, though, which would be interesting. Unless they are planning on buggering up commissars massively, then this is kind of useless, because most of the time, I'd say if you're not even a good guard commander, if you're a semi-competent Imperial Guard commander in 8th edition, you already know that you should be taking commissars. And if you're not taking commissars, then you're not really doing it very well. So I don't think it's very good. Just because I don't think it's very good. Just because I can't see it ever really coming into play, as the way things stand. So yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. I mean, it is kind of good because it means you can have. It means you don't have to have a reliance on commissars. What this gives you is kind of a bit of a fallback. So imagine you've got a blob of, well, not a blob of conscripts, but Well, yeah, blob of conscripts. Well, you need commissars to do blob of conscripts. I just don't get it. I just don't quite get it. You need commissars for your Valhallans. So you're always going to have... The only models that would really need this is conscripts. But they're going to be always babysat by a commissar anyway. So, yeah, I mean... I'm actually not going to spend too much time on that. I don't think very highly of it. I mean, I think it... I don't even know how... Is it even that fluffy? I mean, I guess it is. They are... Yeah, but... Mordian Iron Guard are described as having a grim, dour-faced demeanour. Surely these guys should get it as well. I mean, I'd rather have the one that I have. I would actually rather have the Mordian one, which I didn't think was very good at first, than this one. I would say this is the weakest infantry buff Regimental Doctrine. Hands down. Vehicles with this doctrine that have a damage table double the number of wounds they have remaining for the purposes of determining what their characteristics are. I think this is very good. For those of you who aren't quite sure what this means, what it means is, when you've got, we'll take a Lehman Russ for example. A Lehman Russ has 12 wounds. Now for you to retard it, to make it not be as good, to make it start shooting worse, you need to get it below 7 wounds. You need to take away half its wounds. So for you to do, so you need to do 6 wounds to it in order for it to be -1 to hit. -1 for its shooting, -1 ballistic skill. With a Valhallan one, if you do 6 wounds to it, which would normally be enough to make it not shoot very well, you then take, using the Grim Demeanor characteristic, you take that 6 and you double it. And you only have 6 wounds, but you double it for determining how good your ballistic skill is going to be. So you take 6 and you double it, and that's 12. So essentially, if your opponent does 6 wounds to you, you haven't lost any combat effectiveness. That's incredible. If they do 7 wounds to you, you still haven't lost any combat effectiveness, because they do 7 wounds, you've got 5 left, you double that, that's 10, you're still above the halfway point for -1 for your -1 to hit. If they do 8 wounds to you, you're still above it. 8 wounds, you have 4 left, you double 4, that's 8, you're still above it. You're still above the half wound mark. The only way for your Lehman Russ to start shooting badly is if it's taken 9 wounds, because it has 3 left, and that means it would only have, that means you take 3, you double it, that's 6, that's under half, you're now -1 to hit. The only way for your Lehman Russ to now be shooting at -2 is if it's on 1 wound. That's it. So that's really, really powerful. That's a really, really, really nice buff. Actually, it kind of removes the reliance on tech priests. It really, really removes the reliance on, well, not reliance on tech priests. It really removes any need for tech priests. Because until the enemy has done 9 wounds to you, your vehicles are firing at full capacity. And the reason I take a tech priest with my armour is not really to keep the armour alive that much longer. It's to keep it firing at full effectiveness, putting them back up into the next bracket for a turn or 2. So, yeah, I think the vehicle side of it is very, very good. However, what do I think of this overall? Well, I think it's possibly... Overall, I think it's possibly the weakest of all the regimental doctrines so far. Possibly. I would put Cathchans at the top. Then maybe Mordians. I would put Mordians and Destroyers as equal. Mordians may push it a little bit because they have the +1 leadership as well as the other buffs, as well as good Overwatch, and their order's better. So maybe Mordians is slightly better, but then this one is just below, because the infantry thing is so pointless. The infantry one is so pointless. The vehicle one's great. The vehicle one is fantastic. But the infantry one, it is pointless. There is no reason to have it. However, if they completely rework the way commissars are gonna be, and what I don't know is I have no inside information on this. It's just my gut feeling. We've seen for 3 out of 4 reveals now, Games Workshop focusing on how to improve the leadership of your models as Guard. Why would they give us all these, apart from Destroyers, why would they give us all these buffs to leadership or ways of ignoring battle shock if they weren't going to make our commissars much, much worse? What would be the point? So I am concerned that commissars are going to get reworked. If commissars get reworked and they no longer act how they do currently, then the Valhallan one will be great. You'll need it. You'll fucking need it. But as is, if commissars don't change, which I hope they don't, because if you mess with them too much, they go. The problem with the commissars, if you mess with them, they go from being absolutely awesome to completely useless. So I really hope Games Workshop doesn't fuck with it. But as it is, I would say this is very weak. This Regimental Doctrine, unfortunately. Now moving on, we've already talked about the Conscripts, but there are two the Conscript nerfs, but there are 2 other Conscript buffs that the Valhallans specifically have. Number 1, you have the Valhallan specific order, which is fire on my command. Fire on my command. Life is cheap on Valhalla, and the officers of the Ice Warrior regiments will not sacrifice victory to reduce casualties. The ordered unit can shoot to enemy units that are within 1 inch of friendly units until the end of the phase. But each time you roll a hit of 1 for such an attack, resolve the attack against a friendly unit within 1 inch of the target unit instead. You may choose which friendly unit is hit. This order may not be used to a unit which is within 1 inch of an enemy unit. Basically, if you have a bunch of conscripts just stuck in combat with the enemy, and for some reason you don't want to fall back, or for some reason you can't fall back, then you can use this order to fire into combat. Is it any good? Honestly, unless they're about to fundamentally change the way 8th edition works and you can no longer just fall back from combat at will, then no. I don't see the point in it. It's a bit like the Destroyer one. As Guard, there are very, very few times I'm going to want to stay in combat. Very few times. The vast majority of times, I'm going to pull back out of combat and then just shoot you with my army anyway. So why would I stay in combat, risk losing some of my own men? And some of you might say, well, what if you want to tie the enemy up in combat? Well, that's true, but if you're tying the enemy up in combat, what are they going to do on their turn? Remember, the assault phase comes after the shooting phase. So let's say you charge in. The enemy will just fall back in their turn. Everyone can fall back. So the enemy will just fall back and then shoot you anyway, probably. Or shoot you with something else. If it's not necessarily that unit, they'll shoot you with something else. And if the enemy is charged into you, then you would just fall back, and then rather than wasting an order to allow you to potentially kill your own guys and shoot into combat, just use the order on another unit to improve the firepower, like rerolling ones to hit for the plasma. I think the order's a bit rubbish. It's situational, and anything that is situational is kind of meh. It's why the Katachan buffs are so good. They're non-situational. It's why the Vestroyan buff is so good. It's non-situational. It's always in play. I mean, that's one thing Grim Demeanor has going for it on the Valhallan front. It's not situational. It's always in play, especially the tank one. It's always in play. It's always buffing. Unlike the Mordian one, which is situational, it depends on what your opponent does. This one is always going. The reason I don't like Grim Demeanor, the reason I don't like the Grim Demeanor, and another thing I want to say is it doesn't improve your damage output in any way. It means it's a sort of a defensive doctrine. It's a way of reducing the damage you take as a Valhallan commander. But I do subscribe to the best defense is an attack. And the way I believe that Imperial Guard is so powerful in 8th edition is because they put out such an insane amount of firepower. They have an incredible amount of firepower. So every buff that we have that improves that firepower is fantastic. This doesn't improve our firepower. Well, Grim Demeanor doesn't improve any infantry firepower whatsoever. It's good on the vehicles. It doesn't improve their damage output though. It just means they'll keep firing at the same rate for longer. But it doesn't improve their physical damage output. None of these orders or tactics that the Valhallans have increase damage output. And that's kind of a problem. Like, the Katachan ones obviously increase damage output because they get more strength and they can reroll, they can get more shots. And the Mordian one obviously does because you're going to be hitting more often on Overwatch. And the Vestroyan one is obviously good because you're going to be just shooting at a longer range, which means you can put the hurt on the enemy early and keep it on them. But the Vestroyan one just means you will take more body blows. So I guess it's kind of fluffy. I guess it's kind of fluffy in that way. It means that kind of like Mother Russia. You, as a Valhallan player, you will be taking body blow after body blow. The enemy is going to hit you as hard as they can, time and time again. You're going to take horrendous casualties. Your tanks are going to take horrendous damage, but it doesn't matter. You just keep attritioning forward. So I do like it from kind of a fluff point of view. I mean, Grim Demeanor, I don't know if they could have chosen a better word for it. Because, you know, Grim Demeanor was often used to describe Mordians, but I kind of like it from a fluff point of view. Even if it's not all that powerful, it is fluffy. The Valhallans, like the Soviet Union, which they're based off World War II Soviet Union, obviously. Like the World War II Soviet Union, they take beating after beating after beating, but it doesn't matter. They keep on coming at you, and there's always more of them. Speaking of there always being more of them, we have the final buff for the Valhallans, and I am jealous of this. This is what I think makes Valhallans, with their crappy order and their not so good Regimental Doctrine, the next thing I'm about to tell you basically makes Valhallans potentially top tier. Potentially better than Katachans. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but basically it is unique stratagem, send in the next wave. Valhalla regiments drown the enemy under sheer weight of numbers, wearing them down with endless infantry assaults. Use this stratagem at the end of your movement phase. Select a Valhallan infantry unit from your army, excluding characters and infantry squads that have used the combined squad stratagem. Hello, combined squads is coming back, but we'll get to that in a minute. That was destroyed earlier in the battle. Set up this unit wholly within your deployment zone, within 6 inches of the edge of the battlefield and more than 9 inches away from any enemy models. So, what more to say? You have endlessly respawning conscripts. Now, you can only use this once a phase. It's the end of your movement phase as well. So it's not the beginning of your turn. Everything's already moved, so you can't move them on the board 6 inches and then move them again. You can't do that. So it's a very good doctrine, but it is tempered. You can now only bring back 30 guys rather than 50 if you're using it on conscripts. I'm thinking about this from a conscript point of view, because sending the next wave is the fluffy choice. You're going to put it on conscripts, right? But you spend 2 command points, you bring your 30 conscripts back, and that's really, really good. So if the unit there's a couple of things that make it, it's just, okay, now let's go over the good things. It's amazing. People are already struggling to deal with the numbers the Imperial Guard are able to put on the table. Being able to bring back units at your discretion, infantry at your discretion, is fantastic. It may actually encourage people to take units of 20 rather than units of 30, just because your opponent might struggle to chew through units of 30 conscripts, but he's, you know, if he kills 20, you can bring them straight back. What you got, you know, if you ask yourself this, is it better to lose 20 guys and then be able to bring 20 more on? In which case, that's like having 40 conscripts. Or is it better to lose 20 guys and still have 10 left milling around and that's it? So using smaller units of conscripts is potentially awesome, but there's nothing quite like that psychological effect of bringing back a unit of 30 conscripts. Okay, it's not just conscripts which this is good for, though. I wouldn't really use this on infantry squads, basic infantry squads. I don't really see the use of it, and it says you can't use it on combined squads. So if you're able to lump there'll probably be another stratagem. There's a combined squad stratagem. Probably spend one command point and merge 2 infantry squads together, which is kind of cool. I don't know if you can merge more than 2 infantry squads together, but if you can merge 2 infantry squads together, that's really, really cool, because that means infantry squads will start becoming much, much more efficient for orders, and that's very, very good, and gives people a viable alternative to taking conscripts. You could take 30 conscripts. I mean, we'll talk about combined squads later. Anyway, so you could... I don't see you using this on infantry squads. I see this being used either on veteran squads with lots of plasma and las cannons, or conscripts. Essentially, this is how I see it being used. Valhallan units are going to want to be pushing forward on the offensive non-stop, turn after turn. That's what you're going to want to do. You don't really want to be on the defensive. You want to be pushing forward. You want to be getting in your opponent's face and forcing them to shoot you up. You don't want to give them the choice of being able to sit back and not have to shoot your conscripts. Okay? If your opponent has several units of 30 conscripts in his face, pissing him off, he's got to deal with them, which means you'll be able to use send in the next wave. If your opponent, and so you want to be pushing forward, and then when if you don't even need to sit on your own home objectives, you can abandon your home objectives, right? Push forward with everything, and then in the final turn of the game, or final turn or two of the game, you can bring back a big blob of 30 conscripts, have a commissar nearby, have an officer nearby, so they're not going to run away, string them out so they're over multiple objectives, claiming multiple objectives, bring them on 6 inches, and if you have to, maybe you use a command point, maybe you use a... or not, but you bring on these conscripts, and then you use move. You might use a command point to re-roll the order, but you use move, you get the order off, and you secure your home objectives. That's one way I'd see of using it. Everyone pushes forward, everyone goes for it, from the veterans to the conscripts, everyone's charging forwards, forcing the enemy to inflict big casualties on you, and it doesn't matter because every squad they wipe out, bam, bring in send in the next wave. And so this is it's a good attack and defend stratagem. It's a good offensive and defensive stratagem because it forces you to go on the offensive, and it means that whilst you're losing loads of guys, you can keep up the defense back on their home objectives in case your opponent tries to sneaky grab one from you. Second thing it's really good for is veterans with plasma and las cannons. Imagine your opponent... I faced off against a blue Fire Raptor in my last battle, which I'm going to do an after action battle report on. And that thing just came... It didn't do it. My opponent didn't play it quite right, but it could have wiped out pretty much all my plasma veterans on its own if it had wanted to. It didn't, but my plasma veterans were then fundamental in killing it and bringing it down. Now, imagine if I'd lost all my plasma veterans, and I was like, fuck, that's really, really limited me. I'm going to really struggle with this Fire Raptor. 2 command points, bring a plasma veteran squad back on, and that would have helped me bring the Fire Raptor down, for example. So it's really, really good for using in a clutch. Because imagine you've got an enemy, imagine your opponent has very wisely targeted your plasma-toting squads and then has thrown something really bad right down your throat, right into your deployment zone, and you're struggling to contain it. Maybe you're getting rolled over by some really tough Terminators, or maybe even an Imperial Knight is rampaging through your lines and you're just struggling to contain it. Suddenly, 2 command points. You don't want to bring back Conscripts. They're not going to help you bring down a Knight. They're not going to help you bring down those Terminators. You use 2 command points. You bring back a Plasma Veteran Squad. Again, you make sure you deploy them near an officer. Boom. They come back. Rapid fire range, because it's 9 inches away from the enemy. Absolutely fantastic. So I think sending the next wave is very, very good. I think it is appropriately priced as well. 2 command points is very appropriately priced. I would... if it was only affecting conscripts, I would expect it to be 1 command point. That's what I would expect. But as it affects other things, I think it being 2 command points is perfectly okay. Now, finally, the last thing to talk about is they have buffed super heavies. So, essentially, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but... the Steel Behemoth rule has been updated so that Bane Blades of all types don't suffer penalties for shooting heavy weapons after moving. This is kind of like, it's kind of like grinding advance, where if you move your turret weapons, don't suffer penalties, but this implies that it's for all heavy weapons. So that really does make taking heavy bolter sponsons on your Bane Blades a more viable option now. Really makes it a more viable option. Which is really, really good. It's really, 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 really good. Second thing is you get it's really good considering Bane Blades only have a 4+ ballistic skill. The fact that you can now move around with them and not have to worry is fantastic. And for all of us that built our super heavies with heavy bolters, it's a nice little nod to say we done fucked up. Anyway, second thing is another stratagem. 1 command point, crush them. Should the enemy be too close to engage with heavy cannons, Imperial Army will simply rumble forward to crush them beneath their grinding treads. Use the stratagem at the start of the charge phase. So select an national armed vehicle unit from your army. The unit can charge even to advance this turn. In the following fight phase, attacks made by this unit hit on a 2+. So that's very balanced because you have to do it in the charge phase. So you might be trying to make a long charge, and if you don't make it, you've just wasted a command point. But it's as Games Workshop point out, it's absolutely fantastic on a Bane Blade. They have 9 attacks. Hitting on a 2+ at ridiculous strength. I think AP minus 2 for adamantium tracks. Yeah, you really actually want if you take a super heavy, you just want to ram it into the enemy and just shoot and crush and shoot and crush and shoot and crush. Absolutely fantastic. It actually makes these things incredibly potent in close combat. But when you think about it, if you're getting attacked by a Bane Blade in close combat, you're probably pretty buggered. I mean, that thing is just going to be going nuts, grinding its tracks all over the place. So, the interesting thing to note, though, is it's for any Astra Militarum vehicle. Any. So, that is important. You don't just have to use it on super heavies. You can use it on Lehman Russes and stuff like that. And it's 1 command point. And as we've said, with a lot of these stratagems so far, you can chuck 1 command point at anything. There is obviously a temptation to chuck 1 command point too many times and spunkle your command points in one go. But you're not going to use all of them all the time, and it's just a nice little thing to have where, oh no, my Bane Blade is in close combat. Oh well, don't give a shit. So it is quite good. I mean, I guess you've got to, it's more of an offense. It's used stratagem at the start of the charge phase. Does it have to be your charge phase? I don't know. You might be able to use it in your opponent's charge phase. So it could be an offensive and defensive one. Your opponent's going to charge your Bane Blade with a bunch of units. You're like, well, in your charge phase, I'm going to use this stratagem. I'm going to hit you on 2s now. My million strength 7 on strength, 8 attacks, AP -2. So yeah, anyway, these videos are getting longer and longer. Anyway, going over it, summarising, I think the Valhallan order is rubbish. I don't really see any point in using it. We're always going to want to be falling back. Unless I've missed something, please let me know. I think Grim Demeanor is relatively pointless on infantry, especially if commissars don't get changed in any way. I think Grim Demeanor on vehicles is very, very powerful though, so I can see Valhallan armoured regiments being a legitimate counter to Katachan armoured regiments. Essentially, if you're an armoured player, you've got to make the choice. Do you play Katachans and you have more boom boom with your re-rolling one of the random number of dice, but that only affects some of your Lehman Russ variants, not all of them. If you're the kind of guy that loves Punishers and Exterminators, then it doesn't really help you. Or do you take the other, the Valhallan armoured brigade, in which case you won't be doing any more damage, but you will be able to take a really, really big beating, and your tanks are going to be sticking around for a lot longer. Well, they'll be doing the same damage output for a lot longer. So I think that's really, really, really good. Send in the Next Wave is awesome. I'm absolutely gutted it's not for everyone. I'm absolutely gutted that it's only Valhallans get to do it. I understand why they've done it, and it does kind of bring balance. It brings balance to the force, because if everyone could do it, then it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be balanced. It wouldn't be. Forcing people to have to go Valhallans to get it is kind of good. I would say Send the Next Wave is possibly one of the strongest guard stratagems we're going to have. It is just fantastic. And I think they have balanced it out, because a lot of people would have complained about that. I think they've balanced it out by giving Valhallans kind of crappy doctrines and orders. Unique doctrines, unique orders. I think so. I might be completely wrong, okay? Please, please, please put down in the comments whether you disagree or not, because I may have completely misread the situation, and it could be the fact that Grim Demeanor is absolutely balls to the wall amazing for your infantry, and it could be that the Faramai command is absolutely amazing for your units. I mean, it could be, that could be the case. I don't know. Okay? But from reading it, the order looks a bit rubbish because you've got to stick on in combat you don't want to, and the morale thing for your guys looks a bit pointless because you're going to have commissars around. And you're playing fucking space communist Russia. You're not going to not have commissars, are you? So, there you go. It does mean you're not as reliant. It does mean you don't have to take commissars. And a lot of these buffs have been pointing towards the fact that you can play without commissars if you want to. But I don't see why you would, unless they're getting nerfed. So anyway, yeah, guys, of course, leave lots and lots and lots and lots of comments. I'm sorry this video has almost gone on for 40 minutes, but obviously, again, it's another two-topic one. We've been talking about Conscripts and we've been talking about Valhallans. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Please leave lots and lots and lots of comments, and I'll see you guys next time.